This was my first year running in the Magnify Nitro 3, and I instantly fell in love with the thick layer of comfy Peba. But how would this plateless max cushion shoe fare in the longer term? It's time to lace up the Magnify Nitro 3 and talk about it after 100 miles. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofizi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you about the Magnify Nitro 3 after 100 miles. But before I give my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. There's a pair of shoes that was sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Puma Magnify Nitro 3 after 100 miles. And for these follow-up reviews, I like to start with how I've been using the shoe. Now this is a tall stack height shoe and I've been using it as a max cushion shoe. And max cushion shoes are really a subgenre of daily trainers, so generally do everything that a regular daily trainer should do, but they're emphasizing more cushion, more stack height, more comfort, and I am currently in the thick of marathon training, so max cushion shoes are definitely very useful to me right now as my feet are getting very beat up. And so whenever I've had a chance to go on a recovery run, or if I've got a longer, easy run that I want to just be a little bit more comfortable, the Magnify Nitro 3 has been a very pleasant shoe for me to put on. It's a shoe that I get very excited to put on because I know it's going to be so comfortable for my feet. And with the way that Puma is using Peba, which is typically considered more of a race caliber foam, the way they're using it in this shoe is a way that's very cushioned and soft, but it's also not too mushy. But because the shoe is a bigger shoe and it's squarely in that max cushion genre, it has some of the trade-offs that a max cushion shoe generally tends to have. Because these shoes are a little bit bigger and a little bit more geared towards comfort, think of it like a car. If you have a regular car but make it bigger, more comfortable, it's probably not going to be as speedy or agile. The same thing happens with max cushion shoes. So while it's very comfortable for cushioned, easy paced, relaxed, longer runs or daily training runs, it's not exactly something that I'm going to be taking for a workout or anything where I'm going to be having to run a little bit faster. And those are the kinds of things that I avoided with this shoe. But because it's a max cushion shoe, it's not something that I really expected it to be good at. Instead, it's really good at the things that I expected a max cushion shoe to be good at. And it's probably one of my favorite max cushion shoes that I've run in a long time. There are a couple of drawbacks to this shoe though. I do feel like the upper was a little bit on the hot side, and that tends to happen with a lot of max cushion shoes. Because they're emphasizing comfort, you tend to have a little bit more padding. Because these shoes are bigger, they tend to have more structured uppers, so that way your foot isn't sliding around when it's on top of all that foam. And I found that this shoe was a pretty hot shoe, especially in the summer months that I was running in it. And because of the thickness of the materials, while they are comfortable and stretch a reasonable amount, because they are a little bit on the thicker side, when I did get the shoe really wet with sweat, it tended to stay in there for a little bit longer, and as a result, after 100 miles, the shoe is a little bit more ripe than most of my shoes tend to be. Now that we've talked about how I've been using the shoe, let's talk about how it's actually holding up after the 100 miles. And I'm happy to say that the shoe is doing really well. We talked about how the upper is maybe a little bit smellier than I'd like at 100 miles, and it's holding on to sweat and wetness a little bit longer than I'd like. That being said, there has been some contouring of some of the more flexible materials to the shape of my foot, which just makes it more comfortable. But I'm not seeing any signs of early wear. There's nothing that's starting to fray or start to wear down that concerns me as far as the upper is concerned. It feels like an upper that's going to last me a very long time. I am seeing a little bit more wear when it comes to the outsole though, however, and I'm seeing a lot of wear kind of in the center of the shoe, which I think reflects the way I've been using it as a shoe that I'm using for just regular easy running and some of my slower recovery running. So I'm not landing as far in the forefoot as I might in say a speed work shoe or a race shoe. So I'm landing a little bit more back towards the heel. I'm landing squarely in the midfoot and then rolling forward because my pace is just a little bit more relaxed when I want to be comfortable in the Magnify Nitro 3. And the wear pattern that's showing on this shoe reflects that. There is the most discoloration of the exposed foam in this center area, but there's no scratches or tears or chunks taken out of the foam. It's holding up really well, even though Peba isn't always a material that I consider to be safe to run directly on top of. And as far as the rubber is concerned, I am seeing wear, and it might be kind of on the a little bit more than I'm expecting, but I'd say it's about average in terms of the wear that I would expect to see in a 100-mile shoe, especially in a 100-mile shoe where I spent most of the summer running in it. I don't think it's affecting any of the grip or traction in the shoe or my enjoyment of the shoe by any means, and I don't think it's affecting the amount that the rubber is protecting the foam that's under here. It's just wearing down, and I feel like that's a normal amount of wear for 100 miles. Now, as far as the foam and the ride is concerned, I feel like the shoe continues to be a very comfortable option for me to run on. I will say, and I think this happens with pretty much most of the Max Cushion shoes that I review, is that it's a big shoe using a very exciting foam, and initially, I thought, well, maybe this can be a little bit more of a peppy option that can do both max cushion, relaxed recovery running, and maybe pick up the pace a little bit. But as I've put more miles into the shoe, I'm feeling less and less inclined to try and run faster in the Magnify Nitro 3. And it's just become a very reliable, almost cozy friend for me to bring along for those runs where I just want to be a little bit more comfortable. But I do think that there's still plenty of life left in this shoe. I think the way that they've tinkered around with the Peba formulation in here gives us a lot of great softness, a good amount of responsiveness, but is also still giving us plenty of longevity in this shoe as well. It's not like because this is Peba, it's going to have a short lifespan like some of the early Peba-based running shoes that we saw in like 2017, 2018, and 2019. I still think that we're going to be able to get a lot of miles out of the Magnify Nitro 3, which is consistent with the way that Puma generally treats its daily training product. They put a high emphasis on long-term durability of their shoes, and I don't think that the Magnify Nitro 3 is any exception. Now, before we wrap up this video, let's take a moment to zoom out and see where the Magnify Nitro 3 sits within the broader Puma lineup. Whenever I take a look at a brand, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer, and from Puma, that is the Velocity Nitro 3. This is an updated shoe using aliphatic TPU, which is one of my favorite materials to see in running shoes these days. And the aliphatic TPU has been tweaked so that it's ideal for a daily training application, so that this is a shoe that feels light and nimble, but also durable and protective enough so that you could use it for most of your runs, most of the days of the week. Now, when you are feeling a little bit more beat up and maybe this isn't providing quite enough cushion for you, that's where a shoe like the Magnify Nitro 3 comes in as a max cushion shoe. So if you're going to be on your feet for a little bit longer, or if it's a recovery run where you need to be a little bit kinder to yourself, that's where a Magnify Nitro 3 or any max cushion shoe kind of fits within the lineup. And then when it comes to racing, a shoe that I am enjoying quite a bit from Puma is the Fast R3. Again, this is using aliphatic TPU, but it's using a race-ready version of it, and it's got a carbon fiber plate and an ultra lightweight package, and it's a very exciting shoe to race in, one of my favorites from this year. And now, in between the racing shoe and the Daily Trainer is a shoe that is called the Tempo shoe or the Speedwork shoe. And from Puma, they have another one of my favorites in the genre, and that's the Deviate Nitro 3. This is using elevated foams that are very exciting for going fast, and it has a carbon fiber plate, but it's also tweaked for a little bit more durability, a little bit more everyday use, and you can kind of see that with the way that the upper is a little bit more built up for long-term use. And so anytime that you want to go a little bit faster than you might want to in a Daily Trainer, but aren't quite ready to reach for the race shoe, that's where a shoe like the Deviate Nitro 3 comes in. And this is what I think would be my 4-shoe rotation if I were using all Puma shoes. But Puma is growing in the performance run space, and they have a lot of alternative options or other options in case these shoes don't speak to you. And so we'll kind of go back through this and talk about some of those alternatives. If the very neutral Velocity Nitro 4 is not stable enough for you, there is a lightly stabilized shoe that Puma makes called the Forever Run Nitro 2. This is a shoe that's using two different kinds of midsole foams here to both give you a nice sense of softness, but also a controlled compression when the foam hits the ground and your foot is pushing off against it. So that way it's going to feel a little bit more stabilized underfoot. To me, that translates to a shoe that's a little bit more on the firm side. And even though I generally dislike stabilized shoes, the way that the stability works on this shoe doesn't bother me quite as much. So I actually find myself enjoying this quite a bit. And I absolutely love what they've done with the upper on this shoe. I think it looks great and it also feels great to have on foot. So if you need something more stabilized, this is something that you can reach for. And then if the Magnify Nitro 3 isn't quite what you're looking for in a max cushion shoe, Puma has another option called the Mag Max. And then this can be an alternative or this can be an also as well, depending on how you're using this shoe. I think what Puma was trying to do is turn this into a long run shoe. And that's kind of a new subgenre of shoe that I've been talking about, where the shoe kind of looks like a max cushion shoe, but it's using elevated foams and it's designed that you can actually move kind of a little bit faster in it. So if you have a long run with some marathon effort miles built into it, so if your long runs are also workouts, that's where a lot of long run shoes are coming in. And I think the Mag Max can kind of do that, but I feel like it's still a bit on the heavy side. So for me, it feels more like an alternative to a max cushion shoe. And so it's even bigger than the Magnify, but it's a lot peppier as well. It's more bounce to it, I think, is the best way that I could describe the differences between these two shoes. It's a little bit more like of an airy sensation to it. And so I also really enjoy the Mag Max. And then from the race perspective, Puma has the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is using that same aliphatic TPU foam and a carbon fiber plate, but the foam and the plate are arranged in a different way that I think a different kind of runner would prefer. The shorthand that I use in determining which of these two shoes is right for which runner is, if you're more of a forefoot striker, I'd say try the Fast R3 first, but if you are a heel striker, then I'd say go with the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. I don't think that there is an alternative for the Speedwork shoe. You're gonna go with the Deviate Nitro 3, not Elite, but just regular Deviate Nitro 3. So that one's going to stay in this spot in the lineup, but this is a second lineup that you could put together using all Puma shoes. Now let's wrap up this video by going over an updated buying guide, and we'll also discuss some updated alternative options. The Puma Magnify Nitro 3 is an excellent example of a modern day max cushion running shoe. It's soft, it's comfortable, and the high stack height and size of the shoe are meaningfully useful. In other words, it's a big shoe that's big for a reason, and that reason is comfort. I initially thought that the shoe was a really good deal at $160, and even though this shoe is still at full retail, at least in the United States, I still think that's an extremely competitive price. But let's take a look at some of the alternatives that are out there on the market to see where that $160 stacks up. Now, in the first review video, I gave you the options of the Vomero 18 and the Skechers Aeroburst as some alternatives to look at against the Magnify Nitro 3 as shoes that are priced similarly to the Magnify Nitro 3. And I still think that those are good alternatives to consider. But let's see what happens when you go up a tier in pricing to see how those more expensively priced shoes will fare against the Magnify Nitro 3. And the first shoe that I want to talk about is the more expensive version of the Vomero, and this is the Vomero Plus. Now, this is a shoe that uses all Peba, very much like the Magnify Nitro 3 is using all Peba, and there's no plate in it, and it's meant to be a max cushion shoe. And I think that both of these shoes are very comfortable, very enjoyable shoes to run in. Now, I'd say the big difference between these two shoes, I feel like the drop on the shoe is much more noticeable. If you run in a lot of Nike shoes, you kind of know what I'm talking about, where the shoe kind of feels like it's tipping you forward. It feels like the shoe is much higher in the back than it is in the forefoot, whereas I feel like the Magnify Nitro 3 is giving you more of a less severe drop. It's a more balanced kind of shoe. And the fit of the Vomero Plus also is very much a signature Nike kind of fit. It's going to be a little bit more tight and not quite as comfortable as the Magnify Nitro 3. 3 is, but I would use both of these shoes very similarly. The Vomero Plus comes in at a price premium though at $180. And then the other shoe that I want to talk about goes even more expensive, I guess yet another price tier above that. And that's coming from Brooks. This is the Glycerin Max. This is one of my favorite Max cushion shoes that I've ever reviewed. I absolutely love the way this shoe feels. It's kind of like a Max version of Max cushion shoes. So it's like a Max Max, if that makes any sense. There is a lot of everything that's going on in this shoe, a lot of stack height, a lot of really nice, squishy, comfortable foam, and a lot of padding all throughout this shoe. This is another one of those shoes where there's a lot of thickness to the material in the upper, and when it gets wet, it kind of stays wet for a long time. But that's kind of the nature of the beast when we're talking about Max cushion shoes. I feel like if you're looking at the Magnify Nitro 3 and saying, I'm still not sure that's quite enough cushion for me in my Max cushion shoes, then I'm gonna have you look at something like the Glycerin Max. It's gonna be a little bit mushier of a shoe and not quite as peppy as the Magnify Nitro 3 is, but if you're looking at the Glycerin Max, it's cause you're not worried about peppy at all, and you're definitely just looking for that max level of comfort. And that comfort is something that you're gonna be paying for because this shoe comes in at a price of $200 or $40 more than the Magnify Nitro 3. So those are my thoughts on the Magnify Nitro 3 after 100 miles. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?